Oh, apparently we have a thing here called Frolicon. What is that? I like the sound of it. Is that when everybody dresses up like satyrs and fairies and fingers crossed? I think it's a BDSM convention, but I thought you'd know more. I've never heard of it before. I'm very curious about it though. Frolicking is a fun word. Yeah, I agree. What's that, Master? I'm getting looks from him. So my lunch that I had, Chatter. Did you want to ask your questions now? huh. Huh. Tell you all about it. It is very interesting. I have learned over my last because this last meeting was really good. The one before it was not great. The one before it left me with a bad taste in my mouth. Master says, fortunately, we have soap to wash it out. Huh. The one that lived near me, yes. So that one, it, he was not very generous with his in his attitude or in his tipping. So he was pretty cheap, pretty frugal. So, and I ain't looking for frugal. He stiffed the staff. Yeah, he left a pretty sad tip, especially for it being a neighborhood bar that we were at. I was a little bit sad. Like how sad? Like 10%. But more than that, he scoffed it at 20%. And it when especially being someone who bragged about how much money he had during our meal, it bothered me.
What bothers me is that we feel obligated to make up for the pay that they aren't being paid because their employers don't want to. Tipping is fucking bullshit and has been the entire time since it started off as a means to get around paying former slaves actual pay.
You're right. However, I don't like to stiff the people that it benefits, and it speaks to this person's personality at the very least, if not character. So yeah, was it more than $6 in receipts? I think it was. No, it was 36. I want to say. So, but there were other things too. Like he complained about having um, rental properties that he had to pay fees for, and he couldn't pass the fees on to his renters. And it was like
Tell him how much the fees were.
$70, which I was like, wow, $70 a month. That can get kind of steep. I mean, if you're having to shovel that out every month, but no, it was every year. It was just once a year he had to pay an extra $70 as a business fee. So it was just like little things like that I just it just turned me off. I can't. I need somebody with a more generous spirit than that. Yeah, he's complaining about something like that on a first date too. Not a great start. No. And we talked about a lot of things. We talked about a lot of stuff, but those were the red flags for me. So it wasn't like that was just what he talked about, but just the fact that was that was part of his inner monologue, I guess. Guy said yes, it is, but as a poor schmuck who is non-consensually forced into this hellhole. I don't wanna hurt another poor schmuck. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's not right that we have to tip people in order for them to earn a living wage, and it's not even a living wage. Um,
Yet
but that's where we live.
most states have an alternate pay scale for employees that are on a tip system or in a job that is determined to be supplemented by tips. So I think it's Mississippi. Their pay scale starts out at like 270 an hour. So the state can legally employers in the state can legally pay you $2.70 an hour if you get also tips from your job.
Yeah, not crazy. Guy said, like, I get not tipping if you got like one soda and required no other service than that, but I'll still try and tip a dollar. Yeah, I mean something. I do balk at tipping baristas uh, because it bother I guess it just bothers me that I'm paying $6 for a cup of coffee and then I have to tip on top of that. That does kind of irritate me a little bit. But again, it's not them. And they are the ones that generally benefit from it. So, but anyways, we're not talking about tipping. We're talking about me. If I tip a barista, it's coming with a unionization pamphlet. Yeah, no kidding.
Did you say you wanted them fired?
Yeah. Huh. That is a good way to get a barista fired. Huh. So yeah, but this actually ties in with what our book is about because I realized that after my lunch that I just had with this new person, I really kind of kept my mouth shut most of the time and just listened to him and the things that he was talking about. Um, it's really interesting if you just shut your mouth and let people talk, they will tell you all sorts of things. The newest one or the non-tipping one? Both of them. The non-tipping one, I actually had a difficult time talking because he kept talking over me too, which that didn't. That was another red flag. Um, but generally, if like I'm talking one on one with someone, I tend to let them talk more than me. Um, and it is interesting that if you just wait, people they fill the silence. They don't like it's very uncomfortable to not have the silence. And I'm very comfortable with silence. So I just sit there and smile and wait and then they just keep on talking and it's if you listen folks will tell you who they are and when they tell you who they are listen. Exactly. Yes. So it was interesting between these two people that I had lunch with this last week. The big difference between them. You hate it when people interrupt. Yeah, I do too. It's incredibly rude. If I have something to say, I would appreciate it if you would, not talk over me or at the very least stop talking long enough to listen to what I have to say. Huh. Especially if you ask me a question and then try to answer it for me. That's even worse. Yeah. But they talk about this in our book this week and part 6 in negotiations. Oh, that's finding a slave. Let's go forward here. He talks about just listening and waiting people out to see what they actually have to say. See, I've done some of this and worry I'm a terrible person, but then I remember I'm not an a-hole. I just am socially anxious and awkward introvert who is bad at peopling. Why does it make you feel bad? Why do you feel like a butthole? Because I'm certain I have interrupted before and talked too much for no reason. I think that the key with that is to not do it. I know, that was very helpful. Huh. I, no, I think that the key to doing that is to ask questions and then just shut your mouth and listen, and to not be, worried about getting your ideas across, but, worry about, being an active listener. And in that meaning, that you're making eye contact and that you're giving nonverbal cues and feedback and, asking questions that are, relevant instead of focusing on your own thoughts and what you have to say. That's how you get people to talk. Am I right, master?
Yes.
Master used to do this when we first started dating. Sounds very difficult. Half of what I said just sounds very difficult. Um, I think it also has a little bit to do with the power, dynamic between 2 people when they first meet. Oh, eye contact, that's tough. Eye contact, yeah, that can be a tough one, especially if you are, someone who is averse to it to begin with. What do you do with that, chatter? I have a hard time with eye contact too, actually, especially if it's someone that I think is, if I'm really attracted to them, I have a hard time looking at them. Like, if I find them really physically attractive, and I can't look at them. They're like a cross between Fergie and Jesus, and I can't even look at them. Like, my lack of social skills used to get me beaten up, so they didn't really develop as well. You're working on it. That's good. That's what you're supposed to do. You're doing the right thing then. If you're working on it, then as long as you're making progress moving forward. It is hard though. And that's one of the things that they talk about in this chapter. It actually is about being confident and like exuding confidence in your negotiations so that you enter into your negotiations feeling, well, not feeling, looking confident. Not necessarily that you are. Even he says even if you're scared, um having that uh air of confidence about you makes it, um makes negotiating easier. But you watch introverts just being themselves and I'm like freaking how. It's a good question. It's an effort. It's an effort for me. I don't consider myself an extrovert. I guess you can switch it though. I mean, some people like as they go through their lives, different periods in their lives, they'll go from extrovert to introvert. You can work on it though, Chatter says. It sounds intimidating, but you just notice that you're doing it and start slow. If you realizing if you're realizing you're not giving contact, just try to look at them for 20 seconds, then work up from there. Just acknowledge that it's happening and don't be hard on yourself about it. It can just be something that you're actively working on. Even time yourself in your head and increase it a little each time. That's a good idea. Do you can you do, like, looking people in the forehead or, like, between the eyes or something so that you're not actually looking into their eyes? Does that work at all? I'm asking for a friend. Did it just get hot in here? It feels really hot in here. Just strip off all my clothes. That's good advice, by the way, Chatter. Thank you for that. Chatter knows things. That's actually a strategy I've taught my students too. Oh, start by looking at foreheads. That's a good tip. Oh, look at me. I know things too. I say all this, but over the past few years, I think I've begun to mask very well. Like I overanalyze and remember all of the worst times, but my masking has gotten better. So you have found a way of coping with it. Your masking has become a coping skill to get you through. Not all coping skills are bad. I mean, we use them
He's
because
been
they work.
upping his dosages of copium.
That's not true. I mean, the moment I am back home after a lot of socializing, I'm drained and dead to the world for at least double the amount of time socializing, but I think I hang in all right. I think that it's really smart for you to give yourself that extra time to recoup and recharge your batteries because if you're an introvert, you absolutely need to got to have that downtime. It's hard. I agree with you 100%. I need that time too. Don't talk to me. Leave me alone. What did you think about the negotiations? Did anything stick out to you, Chatter, when you were reading the chapter? Okay. We'll talk to you later, Samantha. I'm glad you were here for a bit, though. I know if it is really bad when I sit down and stare at a wall by accident for half an hour, you just zone out and like get in your own little tunnel. Front door just opened by itself. That wasn't creepy.
There's no scary monsters outside. There's no scary monsters outside. There's no scary monsters outside.
Huh. I don't believe him.
Cha 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 cha. Cha cha cha.
Stop it, master. So the tips on developing a commanding presence is what he calls it in this book. Giving a good first impression, being clean, um, tidy, not looking like a schlub, being conscious of your physical stance so that you're not like hunched over or like having defensive posture, but standing. Actually, I've heard that if you stand with a commanding posture before you go into an interview, you generally do better in an interview because you just feel more confident, even if you're faking it. You definitely look more confident if you're, standing there with your hands to your sides rather than folded in on itself. He also says walk with your head up, portray an I am in charge of this situation image. I think it's about having a mentality um, of confidence, even if you're not quite there. Cheddar said, I agree that body language is important to show your presence as a D type. And I agree that initial contracts are an important way to start, but he'd said that before in previous chapters. Were a few things I would be careful with in regards to some things he said, but I agreed with some of it too. Some things like thinking about how you speak, and if you make a mistake, apologize for it. Don't just think that because you're a Dom, you can't take responsibility and admit mistakes. That gives you more respect by acknowledging those times. Yes, I totally agree with that. I think that being somebody in authority um, who makes a mistake and apologizes is a lot more. I have a lot more respect for those people. Um, the exception to that would be if you are a politician. In that sense, you cannot apologize for anything. But when Masters made mistakes in
Nope.
the past,
As a politician, never ever admit that you did anything wrong. Never ever.
ask Al Franken.
Never ever admit anything.
But Master has apologized for things when he has done things wrong in the past, made mistakes in the past, in those rare instances. And it always makes me respect him more, knowing that he has the humility to apologize when he screws up.
I take them all back.
No takesy backsies. I like to mentioning about creating a shared sense of purpose, listening to your sub's ideas, and the master makes the final decision. But if you want people to be happy in the dynamic, it's important to hear their suggestions and then make the decision. I agree. I think he kind of talked about that. He's talked about that a little bit before about his slave needing to provide him with all of the information that he needs in order to make a decision. And I think that their opinion goes along with that. Guy said, on the note of confidence, that is one of my soapbox items. Folks always say that when they want the person you play with to be confident, especially tops, they want a confident top. And I totally get that. And that's valid. But as someone who was recently a baby top, confidence is hard when you haven't done anything. Yes. Like false confidence feels false and arrogant. If you have experience, you can have confidence in that. But without experience, where can you get that level of confidence? I tried to develop mine from knowing I can be safe and being super communicative, but developing that confidence is hard. I think in my case, um, for instance, when I played with Dino and Pre, Dino was showing me how to do a flogger because I never worked a flogger before. I certainly wasn't confident in it, but I was confident in myself, and I was confident in the fact that I have the ability to learn how to do it. So even though I might have been holding it awkwardly or maybe not quite doing it correctly, I think that just the fact that I have confidence in myself, that's the confidence that you need in order to project confidence. You don't necessarily have to be proficient in the thing that you're doing or even really, you could be learning it for the first time and still exude confidence. Does that make sense, Guy? Your confidence is just placed somewhere else. It's not in your experience. It's in you. Sorry, we watched Fifth Element this week, so that was my Fifth Element reference right there. The other thing that I liked, he said a couple of things I thought were uh, spot on. If you're negotiating with an intended slave who has not negotiated a number of prior contracts, moral, ethical honor binds you to recommend to your intended that he or she seek an experienced master to represent them. Um, what's that, master? Oh. I think that this kind of goes with confidence too, because if you're negotiating, you don't know exactly what you should be negotiating for if you're brand new. So I really liked his advice of having someone in your corner, just kind of watching to make sure that things are done in your best interest. Guy said it does, but it's harder for me because in my everyday life, my confidence comes from my knowledge and experience, and I don't try to be confident in much beyond that. So, developing something outside of that means going outside how I usually conduct myself. So, it's definitely a stretch. Yes, I absolutely agree with you. Especially when you're brand new, that is really hard because you're in a completely foreign situation. You don't know what really to expect. So, yeah, you would have to go outside your own knowledge and experience. That's
Way to bring in the novel chatter.
All right, let me get started on this book here. Huh. I tease.
Stretch out your hammies because it's just about to get wild.
Huh. Oh, but just to follow up with what I was saying to Guy, before we move on to Chatter's novel, I think that your confidence in that situation has to come from knowing who you are, and also when you're young, you don't quite know who you are yet, like, you haven't been, I don't wanna say battle tested, but there's, you don't have a real good grasp of who you are, and I think until you're in your 30s, um, from what I've heard from most people and experienced myself. So, you're right, I think it is difficult to get that confidence in yourself, but I also think that that's a direction that you can head to, get that fake it till you make it mentality. 'Cause I do think that it works. I don't think you can be, arrogant about it, because arrogance and confidence are those are different. You need to figure out what that difference means for you and for other people, because arrogance is not that's never welcome, whether you're brand new or not. So all that to say, that's why I always hate the advice for new tops. Be confident. Like, sure, why not? How about being an expert while I'm at it? That's my advice. Fake it till you make it and own up to it. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to give it a shot, which is what you did, guy. And you did it very well, I thought. Well, I mean, I wasn't there, but from what I heard. Chatter said, I think I have a difference of terminology to him too. He talked about training contract is basically for master slave. In my opinion, a training contract would be in DS. You are working up to things slowly and learning how the dynamic works, building things in as you go and extending it, reevaluating it when you renegotiate. Whereas MS, I believe, is something you should work your way up to. I'd say getting to know you stage probably shouldn't be MS because it's too much all at once. Yes. He talks about that too. He says, I caution you against drafting an initial training contract that exposes your intended slave to the full brunt of your idiosyncrasies and protocols. And I 1,000% agree with that because it can be so overwhelming, especially when you're brand new, to get all of that information all at once. You need to piecemeal it bit by bit. Chatter goes on. I feel like, and on and on. I feel like master slave is a big commitment and not something that should be jumped into straight away. He mentions DS being scening in one part. I feel like DS could be scenes or it could still be incorporated throughout parts of your life, or it could be 24/7, but it's totally different from the extent of master slave. Yes, I agree. He definitely has some different terminology. And I think that might be because he's leather too. What do you think? Does that have anything to do with it? Possibly. She said, plus, I like the idea of kind of, earning a collar and making that commitment from both parties, all parties involved, or at least knowing enough about each other and how things work if you really do want the same things before you get to the MS stage. If that's a stage you do want to have, totally fine if that's not too. Yeah, I think a lot of people going into BDSM for the first time think that like the master slave is that's the ultimate level, I guess. Certainly I considered it like that, but that's not that's that it doesn't have to be what you go for. You don't have to be working towards that. If I was getting into a dynamic, I definitely would want DS and working towards MS, which I think in his terminology is a training contract before a full-blown contract. But I personally wouldn't use the term MS for that stage of the dynamic. That's just me though. I think that defining those terms is also between the parties too. I think that determining what those terms mean for each person is that's an important part of the negotiations. Getting everybody on the same page, making sure everybody's talking the same language. I also think jumping into MS dynamic when you just meet someone is like going 0 to 100. Yes, absolutely, yes. and it'll be extremely overwhelming and make it harder for it to work out long term, but that's just from my knowledge of it, and it might work for some people, but that feels like a huge jump for me when you're still building trust and rapport. Yes, I agree. I think that it could work if you have other people who know you, like people who know both parties and can, help facilitate some kind of, uh, you know, coming together, negotiations and that kind of thing. But I think that for people who are just brand new to each other, that's dangerous. There has to be some trust built up. Um, People have to prove themselves, in my opinion, before they jump into it. Because I mean, a master slave relationship is almost like a marriage. Like you're making a commitment. It's not legal, but it's still that like that commitment is there. But I agree with you that DS can be 24/7 or it can just be a scene. And same thing with master slave. It can be just a scene, doesn't have to be a 24/7 thing. You can do it just in a, little chunk of time, be master slave during that time and then release. It's catch and release. So you think it'd be okay to say to someone that you'd want another person to look at the negotiations contract before agreeing to it? Yes. I I absolutely. In fact, I would go so far as like to say that um if you don't have someone in your life that like you're brand new and you just don't have a community yet, taking your contract and posting it up in a FetLife forum or even Reddit or something, like take your names out obviously, but posting it up there to see just to get feedback from people in the community. I think that would be helpful, even if nothing else.
I was gonna say that it's not. I have my tag limit's 3, so anything over 3 I have to release, but anything under 3 I catch and keep.
And if they're under 6 inches, totally throw them back.
That's a total release. Get out of here. Wide, right? 6 inches wide.
6 inches wide, yes. If it's not a tentacle, I throw it back. Guy said, so all that to say, that's why I always hate the. Oh, I already read that part. Even that he's talking about it as an initial MS contract, I don't think it should even be called MS at that straight stage. Just start as a DS and work into it slowly. I think it depends on each couple and what their experience levels are to begin with. I think that it can be. Um, but yeah, I would say for newbies, slow is always better. When you don't know what you're doing, go slow and have a lot of communication and be confident. Guy said, I always thought the difference between confidence and arrogance is the level of confidence and how much of that you can back up with actual skills and knowledge. But you raise a good point. There is definitely a balance to fake it till you make it that can work. Oh, this is an old response now. Okay. Thanks, Guy. Thanks for updating me. Would it be weird to ask them if they could facilitate or look over the contract before you agree? Yeah, I think that's all awesome. I think that it more not less when it comes to um negotiating with someone. Although I found there was one point that I did not understand that I wanted to ask you guys about. Um Let me find it here. Okay. So this is about negotiations. Uh okay, so his own experience is that slaveless masters often jump right into negotiations with slave candidates before taking time to learn about the person who is petitioning to be the slave. I certainly endorse the use of short term contracts that provide some minimal guidance for both parties while the two people endeavor to learn about one another. And then he goes on to talk about having all the idiosyncrasies and protocols shoved down your throat. I'm gonna need my lawyers to look over this. Huh. You know what? It's, I mean, you certainly could. I think that, probably your DS friends would be probably a better fit for that, though. Um, that's not the part that I was questioning about, though. He says that you all about okay, this is about negotiating. So, we negotiate all the time. Almost everything is negotiable. Avoid early positions. First, create value. Why should someone want you, or what are you offering? The first option isn't necessarily the best. Create many options. And so I guess that was my question. Is what does he mean by avoid early positions in negotiations? I'm not someone who negotiates for business, so I'm not uh, schooled and I'm not well versed in negotiating terms. So early positions. I mean, I have an idea of what an early position could be, but it's probably not the same thing.
Oh, I guarantee you the general idea is the same.
Huh. Do you have an idea of what it means, Master? When he says avoid early positions. Oh, Chatter said, don't say we're going to do this, and then if it doesn't work, not changing it up, or if it's not working, be flexible enough to say you need to renegotiate it. Don't have to stick to something that isn't working. Okay, that makes sense. So being flexible. Okay. Good night, guy.
I think what he means by early positions is the locking yourself into an, an arrangement early on. So, like, I don't know, flexible arrangement. It's hard to tell since I am famously really good about reading all the books. What are you snickering about? You know I can see you, right?
Wait, you can? Oh, yes. Thank you, guy. Thanks for doing the wheel and making me squat, getting me all breathless, making me feel like Trump with COVID. I hope you have a good week.
I I was going to say that the difference between confidence is recognizing that you will undoubtedly fail at whatever you're doing and knowing that you'll make it through, and arrogance is the assumption that you'll never fail and that you're infallible.
I like that. That's a good definition. Yeah.
So when somebody says, you know, be confident, be confident implies recognize that you will fail. It's how you proceed afterwards that makes the difference.
Good answer, Master.
I'm happy that you stopped talking so I could get a word in edgewise.
Here I was just thinking, oh, I can't wait to suck his cock later. Now I'm like,
You're still thinking it.
I can't wait to suck his cock later.
As far as the early positions go, I think that's speaking from both sides of the fence. So it was the D/S, or top/bottom, whatever side of the fence you want to be on. The general idea is early on not to don't lock yourself into anything that you might not already have an understanding for. Especially with people that are completely inexperienced or have very little experience, you know, encountering somebody who's a top that's been a top for or a dom or owner or master or whatever for 2 decades, and you just started out last month, and they're like, well, here's the contract, read it over. That's not the way to proceed. And somebody who's been around for that long that does that, that's somebody you should immediately avoid. They're trying to, if they know that you have very little experience and they're already trying to bombard you with a contract, that should be a bit concerning.
Mm.
That maybe not avoid, but definitely go like, whoa, dude.
Pump the brakes, mister.
Yeah, easy. Unless that's part of the thought, like you've already discussed it. Well, yeah, no, I think we could do a month or two and see how it goes, or 2 weeks, something like that. Although I think 2 weeks is a little short, but
Yeah, he says to have period like your initial period be like 3 months, 3 to 6 months, because you can get
yeah,
a good feel for who somebody really is. Like it takes a little while for them to drop their facade, to stop masking, and to show who they really are in that time. Chatter said if you have an idea in your head, pre negotiations of what you expect, and then get into negotiations and find out the sub doesn't agree, don't force it just because it's the initial idea you had in your head. So, like, if you had somebody who was into, oh, wait, if you were dead set on orgasm denial and like your sub never, ever, ever gets to come, and that's a hard limit for them, I guess it depends on whether or not it's a hard limit for both of you. Is that kind of like what you mean?
oh yeah,
Uh,
I have to update your gummy counter, don't I?
yes. So I had gummies this last week. What the party said in negotiations about non-responses or no responses, I think you need to be careful about what he said. No simply indicates that you haven't explained the benefits. Oh, yes, I agree, Chatter. To me, if they say no, it's no. I agree with that. If it's a soft limit, you can talk about that. Or if you feel like maybe you don't understand why you mean by a particular issue, you could explain it further. But I think it's extremely important not to push this one. They are in a vulnerable position when they are negotiating and are probably going to be nervous. Some subs get really scared about upsetting a Dom too, particularly if they don't know them well yet. So if they say no and you say but, they might feel pressured into agreeing to it, even if it's not something they want. I agree with you, especially because subs tend to be people pleasers. And if you get somebody in a vulnerable position who is eager to please, even in spite of their own feelings and limits, that is you're setting yourself up for disaster. I think it's better to take that no and maybe you could revisit it at the next negotiation and see what their feelings are on it then. But I think it's really important not to make them feel like they're disappointing you by not doing it or feeling put on the spot to say yes. Yeah, I think that that's a very good advice. And that kind of bothered me that he had said that too. I'm trying to see where that was at. Yeah, because he said that a no is a means not yet. And yeah, I agree with you. You should not be pressuring anyone in that negotiation stages. He said, oh, 3 months. Yep, 3 months. Negotiate the indicators of success for the next 3 months. I thought that was a good um, advice as well, which we'll look at in just a second. I'm going to read Chatter's um, blurb here. I was meaning for it. I was meaning it for what you were saying about not sticking to your initial points, but what I was typing the above comment is about the same thing. But yes, I think I just lost it. Um, but yes, I think that if you want orgasm denial and the sub comes into the negotiations with that being a soft or hard limit, you need to either be okay with that or and not have it in your dynamic, or wait and see once they're more comfortable in negotiating it. Or if that's something really important to you as a Dom and the sub has a limit, that might be a sign that you shouldn't have a contract together. Yeah. Or they're not looking for the same. Yeah, you just might not be compatible, and that's okay. You need both people to be happy with the agreement before you fully go into it. Yes, absolutely. And that's, I think that having enthusiastic consent is important in this regard. Because having somebody who's like, I guess, I mean, I don't really want to do that, but yeah, I guess we'll go ahead and do it. That's not enthusiastic. That's somebody who's being pressured. Yeah, I agree. It was a very important one to talk about. I'm glad that you did, Chatter. Don't feel sorry for your essays. I tease you, but no, it's good information. Um, so yeah, negotiating the indicators of success for the next 3 months. So, making sure that everybody knows what a successful, uh, relationship looks like. So what are you looking for at the end of your 3 months? What are you gonna look at and be like, "Oh, this is exactly what I wanted. It does this, this, and this." It, has, everything that I had laid out in the negotiations, and, my sub isn't, you know, masturbating on her own, and she's, bringing me coffee the way that I like, and, scrubbing the floors naked or whatever. I think that that's an important one, is to make sure that everybody knows what success looks like, and then you have something to aim for, as opposed to having everything be, well, I guess, put into a negative light, like having rules about, don't do this and don't do that, and, don't do this other thing. I think those are harder, goals to focus on, um, harder indicators to hit if everything's, framed in a negative light. That makes sense? So I think having a positive, like, what success looks like, I think that that's, as opposed to what failure looks like, I guess is what I'm saying. Chatter said, "I love that, and having the specifics. You're expected to do this 3 times per week, etc. I think that's a great way to look back and see if you're both on the same track and doing what you both agreed to, and if not, why, and if there needs to be any changes." Yes, and that was the other thing that he said too. Thank you, Chatter. Is that to get really, specific about what it is that you're negotiating. So he said, "So if you're going to require the slave to be studying, how much time does that require or involve per day or week? If the slave is going to be journaling, what is the content of the entries and how long must they be?" Um, and he gives an example about how he had failed to negotiate this with his slave, and she thought that just giving him basically the minutes of her day was what he wanted, when really he wanted like an in-depth, thoughtful analysis of, what had been on her mind. But they were both disappointed, and, she was hurt that he didn't respond to her writing, and he was disappointed that he wasn't getting like the meat of, um, out of the exercise. And so having, knowing what a successful, journaling assignment looks like, was helpful for her. And it can show how far you've both come if you have success criteria. I think that's a really positive thing to discuss. Yeah. And you know what? Master's done this for me too. Like my oral evaluation cards. Those were my success indicators. Like he put on their, you know, ranges for me. Yeah, you love those? They are such a good idea. And it really improved my skills, in serving him, when I knew exactly what it was that he was looking for, and I could kind of adjust things, and got, not instant feedback, although, I mean, you kinda get instant feedback from the moaning and groaning, but, and then the spurting. But, um, yeah, you get, but having that extra feedback immediately afterwards, was really helpful. Yeah, sploosh. That's why I think it's good to have set times to have open conversation, or when needed, but coming back together without judgment to discuss if you're both understanding everything clearly. Yeah, I agree. And I like that he does it at 3 months, cuz that's, there's something magical about 3 months. I think that we as humans living on this earth we like have we go in our seasons, and it feels like 3 months is just a good project time. Like, you start and end a project in 3 months, and that just feels, I don't know, it just feels right. Was there anything else, Chatter or Crap 20? The main things for you? Yeah, that was those are the main things for me too. It was a good chapter though. I felt like there was some good information in there. I think Chatter has it under control. Maybe. You had way too much to say on it. No, you did good.